Welcome, psychology students, to the permanent night. I am the Pale Redeemer, and in this explainer, we're going to conduct a bit of a ritual summoning. Today we're diving deep to dissect the profound pathology of modern internal nihilism, and we're going to do it through the lens of a dark Gothic fable known as the vacant throne. If you've ever felt completely paralyzed by your own mind, maybe trapped by your intellect, or just weighed down by this inescapable guilt, well, you are definitely not alone. You are simply wandering through dark Camelot.
So let's jump right into the baseline of this pathology. Clinically, we call this internal atavism. And to understand it, we use the metaphor of the gilded cage. The gilded cage is basically the ultimate manifestation of a mind that is so terrified of its own darkness, and, honestly, its own massive potential, that it deliberately chooses stasis over girth. We build these psychological cages to shield ourselves from what we call the logic of the crucible, which is just the necessary, unavoidable pain of personal development. We end up trading the unpredictable, beautiful reality of genuine psychological movement for a completely false sanctuary.
To really understand this, we're going to open up the ledger of nothingness. Today we'll be covering the gilded cage of nihilism, memory at the iron threshold, reason in the silent archive, will and the scraped shield, the judgment of the violet verdict, and finally, the grave dance of recovery.
All right, Section 1, the gilded cage of nihilism, focusing on the sentinels of stasis.
Now, take a look at the stark clinical contrast we have here. Over on the left, you've got winter's bite, the literal breath of the void. This represents those internal mechanisms in our psyche that try to freeze our soul's atoms. They want to turn us into a monument of absolute permanence. And why? Because a monument can't fail, right? But the catch is, a monument also can't live. On the right side, we have the healthy, yet totally terrifying freedom of actual psychological movement, which is the spirit of becoming. These sentinels of stasis view that reckless, fluid freedom as a dangerous fever that they absolutely must cure.
Moving right along, we summon our first failed architect from the ledger, Section 2, Memory, and the Iron Threshold. This introduces the necrotic morality of the superego.
Here we meet the Pale Inquisitor, the Knight of Memory, who guards the iron bridge of your mind. The throne stands famously vacant. That quote right there is the absolute core of the Inquisitor's trauma. He's a perfect representation of a subverted superego. You see, his secret shame is that he actually crossed the bridge, reached the Grail, and found it utterly empty. The throne was vacant. And because he couldn't handle the existential terror of a world without inherent prepackaged meaning, he turned into a tyrant. He demands perfect stillness from you so no one else ever discovers that the void exists.
So the crucial takeaway here is how this subverted superego operates. It uses silver guilt and iron laws to ruthlessly punish you for your past failures. He traps your psyche in this necrotic, dead morality. Instead of just letting you learn from the past and, actually move forward, the Pale Inquisitor uses your memories as heavy anchors. He makes sure you remain completely frozen on the bridge, forever apologizing for your imperfections.
Let's turn the page and descend. Section 3, Reason and the Silent Archive, where we confront hyper-rationality and the glass library.
If the previous night weaponized your past, this next one, the Last Thinker, or the Knight of Reason, weaponizes your intellect. He's essentially a Merlin gone rogue. Look at how this hyper-rational part of your mind operates. He takes the messy, beautiful, fluid energy of living reality and just strips the brilliance right out of it. He hoards your victories and experiences as sterile data in these heavy, leaden boxes. To him, the noise of human becoming is a dangerous contagion. He wants to intellectualize literally everything until all the emotion and risk are totally neutralized into absolute silence. By treating existence itself as a disease that needs to be suppressed, the Last Thinker's logic stops protecting the mind entirely. He genuinely thinks he's keeping you safe by analyzing everything to death, but actually, scratch that. He's actively curating the kingdom's absolute extinction. A life fully indexed is a life already dead. You literally cannot spreadsheet your way into a meaningful existence.
Let's keep moving. Section 4 brings us to Will and the Scraped Shield, where we explore raisonnement deep in the uncanny wood.
Meet our third failed architect, the Knight of Will, better known as the Tarantula Preacher, who has totally discarded his heraldry. Honor is a ghost's garment for a king who is also a ghost. That is the voice of pure, unadulterated cynicism, right? He methodically scrapes the gold of individual stories and triumphs right off his shield, fully embracing the uncanny law of the predator. Because the king is a ghost, because there's no ultimate savior coming to rescue us, he preaches this dark gospel of equality. But spoiler alert, it's actually just the absolute lowest common denominator of despair.
Let's unpack the pathology here. The tarantula preacher embodies resentment, this deep-seated resentment that tries to pull everyone else down into the stagnant soil of the herd. He literally reimagines the noble round table as nothing more than a circle for prey to gather. This psychological state might mimic strength through its anger and cynicism, but make no mistake, it is purely a will to undo. It offers a stagnant future built entirely on hunger and revenge. It just drags your psyche backward into an animalistic state.
And now, things escalate. Section 5, Judgment, and the Violet Verdict. This is the absolute climax of our psychodrama.
The systems of memory, reason, and will have totally failed to protect you. In fact, they've imprisoned you. Enter the Crow, the zeitgeist made physical flesh, and the Violet Knight. They bring the Violet Gavel, a weapon of mythic intelligence that literally feeds on your cynical knowledge. When your internal stasis just gets too heavy to bear, this gavel delivers a bruised verdict. It expands to match the immense spiritual weight of your despair and violently crushes those failed internal gods together. It shatters the gilded cage entirely. Yes, it's a massive breakdown, but it forces an agonizing evolution. You can't hide anymore.
So what happens after the cage shatters? Section 6, The Grave Dance of Recovery. Here is where we talk about building light on the wreckage. Following the crush of the gavel, you face the ultimate ultimatum regarding trauma recovery. The breakdown leaves you with two distinct paths. On the left, we have total regression. You can just succumb to the devastation and morph into a feral man-beast. That's the tragic synthesis of Faustian intellectual despair mixed with purely instinctual animal survival. Or, look at the right side, the grave dance. You can actively perform this dance, choosing to take your pain and the wreckage of your shattered cages and synthesize them into profound personal growth. This right here is the true, unfiltered essence of psychological trauma recovery. Recovery through this framework is definitely not about returning to the gilded cage. The mechanics of the grave dance require you to actively respond to the wreckage. You have to create your own light in the permanent night. You do this by bonding with the verdant life. Think of it as the swamp fire of raw, creative, biological energy. Doing this lets you stop seeking out false sanctuaries so you can reclaim the reckless freedom of the dancer, literally creating yourself anew from the broken pieces of your intellect.
And this realization beautifully recontextualizes our entire Gothic fable. Once you finally realize that no king is coming to save you, once you accept that the Inquisitor, the Thinker, and the Preacher were really just your own fears trying to protect you, the vacant throne shifts. It transforms from this terrifying source of nihilism into a magnificent, limitless stage. It becomes a brand new horizon that those old, rigid higher men could simply never reach. The throne is empty because it is waiting for you to step up and create your own meaning.
I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought as we close the Purple Ledger for today. In the permanent night of your own mind, when your old defense mechanisms finally collapse under their own crushing weight, what will you choose to become? Are you going to regress into the shadows? Or will you ignite the verdant life and dance upon the wreckage? The stage is yours. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer, and I will see you all next time.